Imagine a world untouched by Europeans, vast lands stretching from forests to mountains, home to thriving Native American civilizations. But everything was about to change. The age of exploration had begun, and soon, ships from distant lands would arrive, forever altering history. The year is 1492. A Spanish-funded explorer named Christopher Columbus sails across the Atlantic, believing he's found a new route to Asia. But instead, he stumbles upon the Caribbean islands. News of his discovery spreads like wildfire across Europe, igniting a race for riches and new lands. Soon after, explorers like John Cabot claim land for England, while Amerigo Vespucci realizes this is not Asia, but an entirely new world, one that would soon bear his name, America. The Spanish were the first to seize the opportunity. Hernán Cortés arrives in Mexico in 1519, encountering the mighty Aztec Empire. With fewer than 600 men, he uses deception, alliances, and European firepower to bring the empire to its knees. Just over a decade later, Francisco Pizarro does the same to the Inca in South America. The Spanish build vast cities, erect churches, and establish colonies from Florida to California, spreading their language and faith, while devastating native populations with war and disease. Across the Atlantic, England watches Spain's growing empire and wants its own piece of the New World. In 1607, 3 ships land in what is now Virginia, and settlers establish Jamestown, the first permanent English colony. But survival isn't easy. Hunger, disease, and conflict with Native Americans nearly wipe them out. Then, a new crop, tobacco, changes everything, making Jamestown thrive. Just a few years later, in 1620, another group, the Pilgrims, arrive in Plymouth, Massachusetts, seeking religious freedom. They endure brutal winters but, with the help of Native Americans, survive and lay the foundation for future colonies. The English aren't the only ones drawn to this land of opportunity. In the north, the French establish Quebec in 1608, trading furs with Native Americans and forging alliances. Meanwhile, the Dutch build New Amsterdam on a small island at the mouth of a river, what we now call Manhattan. For a time, it thrives under Dutch rule, but in 1664, the English take control and rename it New York. The pieces of America's future map are falling into place. As English colonies grow, so do tensions with Native Americans. Settlers push westward, claiming more land, leading to fierce battles. In 1636, the Pequot War erupts in New England, ending in the near destruction of the Pequot people. Decades later, in 1675, a native leader named Metacom, or King Philip, unites tribes against the English in a final attempt to resist colonization. The war is brutal, villages burn, and thousands die. But in the end, the English prevail, solidifying their dominance over the land. By the early 1700s, 13 British colonies stretch along the Atlantic coast. They grow rich on trade and agriculture, but at a terrible cost. To fuel their economy, colonists rely on enslaved Africans, brought across the ocean in horrific conditions. The triangular trade flourishes. Europe sends goods to Africa, Africa sends enslaved people to America, and America sends raw materials back to Europe. These colonies, built on commerce and forced labor, are now thriving, but their story is far from over. For years, the British government largely leaves the colonies alone. But that changes after a costly war with France. To recover their losses, Britain imposes taxes on tea, stamps, and sugar, without colonial representation. The people are furious. In 1773, a group of colonists disguised themselves as Native Americans and dumped British tea into Boston Harbor in protest. The event, known as the Boston Tea Party, pushes tensions to the breaking point. Just 3 years later, in 1776, the colonists declare independence, and the American Revolution begins. The colonization of America was a story of ambition, survival, and conquest. It brought new ideas, cultures, and opportunities, but it also brought suffering, war, and displacement. From small settlements to a revolution, the seeds of a nation had been planted, one that would grow into the United States of America.